Namaste. Hello, beautiful world. It is amazing to be with you again this week, start of a new, wonderful, beautiful week. So, I am really called today to share with you a transmission about triggers. So, I'm going to be speaking to triggers, what triggers are, and how we can work with triggers, work through our triggers. So I've been for the past 10 days, more than 12 days, I've been working on a particular sadhana practice. So I've taken a commitment of a 21-day sadhana. So I will do the same kind of shortened practice of 15 minutes every day for 21 days. And the practice is a Kali Kriya practice. So I've been initiated to working with some very esoteric teachings, practices, technologies of the deity Kali, and also the deity Sekhmet, who are very similar. Some even say one and the same. And I have been working with a particular set of practices over the last 12 days. And wow, wow. She is very present right now, not just for me, but for so many others. Because she is the most compassionate of all of the deities, the most loving of all of the deities, because she sees that future version of us already. She exists on the timeless dimension where past, present, future exist all at once. And so she sees our most fully realized, actualized, most highly evolved self. And she's seen that whole journey. She can see it all like that. And so she already sees us at our full potential, shall we say. So for her, she's coming and visiting and meeting us in these timelines, in these lives, to aid us, because she sees our potential. And when she meets us, she's like, well, let's just cut to the chase. Let's cut the crap. Let's see the truth of the matter. Let me show you who you really are so that you can see, so that you can just, do your thing and evolve and get that. Because the time is now. No need to hesitate. No need to, waste any more time paddling around in this side of the pool. Let's just make a dive for it. Let's just go for it. And so she can show up in a very fierce way, but she can also show up in a really gentle way. It depends on how you're going to meet her. So if you're like, no, I don't have any shadow. No, I've got nothing to fear. I've done all my work. I'm in love and light. And if you're kind of, in that kind of suppressing stuff, maybe just totally not willing to go there, then yeah, she's going to come out you full force. She might even appear kind of scary. It might even be uncomfortable and challenging to sit with that stuff when she comes to show you. But if you are like willing, you're devoted, you're committed, and you're really taking this on, you're taking this seriously, and you recognize that you've got stuff to work on, she's going to show up compassionately. She's going to show up and hold that space for you in a really loving way. And so this is the time. This is Kali's time. This is Kali and Sekhmet's time. They are here to aid us, to assist us, to evolve. But in order to evolve, we've got to be able to really sit with ourselves and face ourselves. We've got to be willing to see what's there. And when we can do that, we can work with it, we can correct it, we can adjust the mind. So Kali, Sekhmet, they are showing up for us. You may be already working with one or either of those energies, or you may not. This may just be a deep synchronicity route for you right now. You've turned up here and you're like, wow, these energies have been coming through, and okay, I'm meant to see or feel or know something here. Because Kali and Sekhmet, they show up for us at these times of challenge and adversity. They show up to aid us. They are warriors, spiritual warriors, and warriors of the heart. They fight on those levels. Yes, they are also bringing all of those other dimensions from the malevolent stuff out there, because it's not just all love and light, but they're also guarding here within. They're also residing within the microcosm, not just the macrocosm, in the microcosm. They are holding that space for us. And for those of us that are willing, authentically inquiring students, when we're in that self-inquiry and we're asking to be shown the truth, they're there, and they will show you that reflection of the mirror. So how does this relate to triggers? Triggers, in order for us to really work with those triggers, we have to do the same. We have to be able to sit with them, to see them, really, to like bring them into our field of consciousness. And it's the same, not just with triggers, but with anything that's challenging. And a lot of what is challenging is notified or is brought to us or is indicated to us by a trigger, right? So what is a trigger? That trigger is a feeling, a sensation, a thought, maybe a voice in the mind, something which is like a reaction to that which is occurring. So something is occurring. I am watching the news, and this feeling starts to arise. This this feeling in the pit of my stomach, and it's rising up and up and up to my heart, and it's a deep aching feeling. And it's rising from the deepest depths, actually, up into the gut and up into the heart. And that itself can be a trigger. Or I'm speaking to a friend and they start to talk about somebody in a certain way, and I feel triggered. I feel defensive. I feel this like, ooh, I want to defend that person. I feel this like urge to say something. I feel an urge to react in a certain way. Or I see an image maybe, and it may trigger sadness. I may start to cry, or I hear somebody's story and it's just, those feelings of sadness arise and tears come out. Those are all examples of different kinds of triggers. And sometimes a trigger isn't like a highly conscious thing. It can be a feeling, a sensation in the body that occurs way before our neurotransmitters are picking them up. And, there's a lot of science around this also, that the neurotransmitters tend to be a bit behind the physical body. And sometimes the feelings that are arising are, a lot of the time, most of the time, they're connected to the old story. It's like the thread of that goes down into a place where an old memory or a burden or the karma or that fear is stored in the bio memory of the body, of the energy system. So those fundamental traumas that happened, or it might be ancestral, it might be within our life, it might be burdens that we took on as a result of trauma, the karma, that conditioned identity that we took on, that sits within the energy field at some place. And then the parts within our system kind of protect it because it's uncomfortable. It's a wound. Those parts of us don't want it to be opened, because what happened back then was so uncomfortable, so difficult, so challenging, so hurtful, or whatever. So we have all these layers of protection over it, keeping it kind of locked away, but actually the memory is still there, and it's a part of our whole internal system's way of helping us survive in the world and protecting us from potential threats and dangers. Is that when something happens, or when something occurs in the external field, the friend is making a comment, or I'm seeing something, or I'm watching the news, that old wound is kind of being activated. And so these sensations, these feelings or thoughts are activating in order to alert us that, like, okay, there is a danger here. So we may have become conditioned ourselves, we may have conditioned ourselves, or we may have become conditioned also, we may have allowed that conditioning in, to believe that the best way of dealing with these sorts of triggers is to just kind of push them away. And sometimes these triggers can be also understood as anxieties, because you see, anxiety is like a collection of different triggers, a collection of different things that are going on in the system that then create this buzzing feeling that sometimes also can lead to overwhelm. So anxiety is a term that we just give that to say, I'm just feeling anxious. And often it's a collection of different things coming together to create a little bit more of an overwhelming feeling, or a feeling that's got a more depth to it. Sometimes if it's just one trigger, it's one thing, it's like we can be with that and it's okay. But sometimes when it's lots of energies coming in, so we might have a worry, and then on top of that, there may be a stressful energy. And on top of that, there may be some sadness or some anger. And then together it starts to create this sort of general heavier feeling of anxiety. And so triggers can absolutely very much be perceived as an anxiety, or be, however, in order to really work with those triggers, it's important for us to start to untangle these different energies and see them all individually for what they are, so that we can really give each and every one of those energies the time and space to work through them and then move through them, because each of these triggers are coming from a part of us, of our internal system, of our mind, that's here to protect us. And sometimes parts of our mind don't seem very helpful, but they are all here to help and guide and protect us in some way. And so when this default kind of setting is activated of like, I'm just going to push that away, or I'm just going to move through it, I'm just going to get on with it and it will be fine. When we do that, what we're saying to those parts of us is, you're not important. The feeling, that old memory, it's not important, and I just need you to move aside so I can get on with my life. And when we do that day after day after day, year after year after year, the impact that has on our system is profound. So sometimes for some of us, it can take a lot of work to get back in touch with these parts of us that we just pushed away. So when I'm talking about really sitting with ourselves, sitting with these triggers, sitting with that which is arising, being able to see it and give it that space, that's why I'm talking about that, because these parts of us have often been really pushed away and suppressed. And it's okay that we did that, okay? I'm not making any of us wrong or saying that it was bad. It's just what we had to do to survive, to get on with things. And now that we have a different awareness, we can shift this, we can change this, we can enter into a new dialogue with those parts of ourselves. We can work with these triggers in a different way, because the triggers are the parts of us being triggered. Those energies within our mind being triggered, and they all are like their own personalities. right? We all have multiple personalities. It's not just a phenomenon that's reserved for people in mental health institutions. We all have multiple personalities. We all have different parts in our system that have different belief systems that are protecting us in a different way. Absolutely. So, triggers. When we notice a trigger, that's where the magic happens. It's in the noticing. And that is simply step one. And from step one, we just follow that trailhead. We always just follow. There's nothing complicated about this. There's nothing difficult about this. The most challenging thing is to just keep coming back to the practice, to keep remembering. That's it. Because again, we've gone through that conditioning. We've forgotten the technologies. We've forgotten who we are, what we are. We've forgotten our technology. And so we're in this process of remembering, right, okay, I'm soul, and I'm going to sit and anchor in seat of soul, and I'm going to observe. I'm going to notice and observe. So every time we notice, what we're doing is we're noticing it from soul. So that's something we can do, reaffirm, okay, yeah, I remember I'm soul, and I'm noticing from soul. So when we notice the feeling, the sensation, the burning, the pit of the stomach, when we hear the immediate reaction of the mind, that's the trigger. We notice the trigger. Just be with it. So create that little gap between noticing and then the default reaction. Just create that gap. And just be in that gap and allow yourself to start to really notice what comes next, because that's the magic. So what comes next? The thing is triggered and you noticed it. And you may then notice something else arising, another trigger. And this is the important thing, because it's that secondary trigger that arises in response to the first trigger that we need to work with also in that moment. So say, for example, I'm noticing this thing rise from the root up to the pit of my stomach into my heart when I'm watching the news. Now, if I want to be with that, to really understand that which is arising so that I can really work with it and give it the attention it desires, I need to be able to sit with that. But then if something else arises in response to that, so then maybe something comes up like, what is that? What is that feeling? That doesn't feel good. That feels awful. There's something wrong with me. So sometimes this other voice can arise, or this other feeling can arise. That's another trigger. But if that then starts to take up my energy and diverts me away, then I'm starting to lose focus with the initial trigger that's arising. So I need to work with this trigger that's arisen here to say, okay, I see you, I notice you, thank you, and I acknowledge your presence, and I hear what you're saying, and I'm going to go into that self-inquiry so you can relax, knowing that I'm going to work on it. Or whatever it is that you have to do to work with this trigger to help it to relax. Now, I say just work with it like you would speak to a friend, a good friend who's come to you, who's looking for advice and guidance. Just simply speak to it in that way. And that part might start to relax. And if it pops up again, you just have to have that patience and go back and ask that part again. It's okay, I see you. Always acknowledge, always notice, always acknowledge. It's okay for you to be here. And I'm still working and being present with this part so that you don't have to do that job and work so hard. It's my job. And eventually, through time, days, weeks, months, years of doing this practice, then all the parts in our system, they start to kind of have their place, and we start to have this different dialogue, and we start to come into a different relationship and build the trust. So this part doesn't feel like it needs to keep popping up, because it trusts that I, soul, has this. So that when this part relaxes, I can be back present with the initial trigger. And I can be with this feeling that's arose. I can notice it. I can acknowledge it. I can send it my self energy. I can inquire into it. Where is it coming from? Okay. And then I might start to learn in time that this is coming from a deep fear. It's coming from a deep fear that I have, and it's rising into the heart because it wants me to see it. It wants me to see this fear, and it wants me to give it that love so it can dissolve, it can transmute that fear. And I can be with it, and then I can acknowledge it, and then I can take this part with me into my practice. So the next time I'm practicing, I can call this part forward, and we can transmute the energy using Reiki or Kriya or breath work. And eventually this part will be able to release its burdens, or will be able to transmute its energy. And we will find one day that we can watch the news and just see it for what it is and be like, okay, it's okay, because we cleared those things within us. But we weren't able to really do that if all these other parts that were popping up, we just got distracted with them and carried away with them, and we're like, where am I now? And that's what we say. It's like, I'm really confused. I don't know where to begin, because actually we lost sight of where we did begin. It's kind of like, for some of us, we almost didn't even see it. We almost missed the beginning. It's like the beginning happened, and then we just kind of went with this part and that part and got distracted. So notice, and just allow for a moment that gap for you to then fall into the gap. In London on the Underground, they say, mind the gap, don't fall into the gap. But what we're telling you to do here is to fall into the gap. The gap is beautiful. It's not scary. It's beautiful. It's adorned with flowers, and it smells wonderful, and it's colorful, and it's there to hold us, to be able to stay with the noticing a little bit longer and extend it a little bit longer the next time, and the next time a little bit longer, until we can really sit with that. And then as these other parts are popping up that are taking us away and distracting us, we can work with those parts. So we're still holding that original part that's arose. So it's like we need to practice also like taking our attention in multiple places at once. And that's why within the field of yoga and Reiki, we use multiple points of focus. So I teach, often to my clients, focus at your third eye, but then also focus on the flow of energy, or also focus at the heart. Because when we can start to cultivate these multiple points of focus, we can be with this part, and then we can give these parts that are popping up attention, do the thing that we need to do with them, and that might take some time, and then we can come back here. And sometimes we can say to this part here, I'm just gonna take my attention elsewhere for a moment, but I'm still with you. And we can even put them somewhere, put them in our heart, put them on a beach, put them somewhere they want to be so that they feel safe. Yeah, love this work. I personally have felt over the last few days some major triggers, just like watching how I'm able to react just from this place of self energy, to not actually react, but to just really stay just like, but it's doing the work though. I'm doing the work in that moment. It's not like I've gotten to a place now where I'm all healed and I'm so great at this. No, I've been doing the work over and over again in the moment, not just on the yoga mat, in the moment, reminding myself, sitting with the parts, doing that work in the moment. And I'm just finding it now so much easier to just get past the triggers quicker, and some of these triggers will just go all together, and some of them will just take us years and years and years to get past. And that's okay. It doesn't mean we're not good, or we're not spiritual enough, or we're not connected enough, or we're not in enough self energy. To be able to sit in your self energy and watch all of this arise, that is spirituality. That's self energy. That in itself is being in self. It's not like, oh, the more clear you are, the more you worked on your stuff, the more spiritual you are, or a better teacher you are. That's not how it works. Because there's no judgment from the guides, from source. There's no judgment of how much you've done and how much you've cleared. It's all good. It's all good. It's the jewels, the gem, the treasure lies in that integrity that we have, the devotion that we have, the commitment and willingness that we have to notice, to do this work. That's where the integrity lies, and that's the most important thing. So that's pretty much what I wanted to share. I'm feeling it's very complete. That's phase one, working with triggers. So just get on with that for the next 20 years and then come back to me. I've so enjoyed sharing this. Thank you so much for joining. If you have any sense or ideas of where you want this to go next, of what you want to hear next, of what you want to know, any questions you have or any reflections, then please get in touch. I've had somebody on Facebook Stacy saying the gap is key for me. Absolutely. The gap is key. Beautiful. We've had Ayan Ouch saying, thank you. Thank you so much for joining. Thumbs up from Union Street. Amazing. Loads of waves. Walking miles. Oh, what a beautiful comment. Namaste, Ji. Thank you so much. So wonderful. Osho King, I'm very, very well. Thank you so much for joining us. Hi, Lynn. Alto Karim. Enthusiast Realtor. Oh, it's been so wonderful connecting with you all. So yes. Good morning, Elaine. I've just seen your message on Facebook as well. Hi, Sinead. Thank you so much for joining. It's been wonderful to connect with you. Please stay in touch. If you want to know more about stuff that we've got going on, we have like a beautiful free course called Protect Your Mind, Body, Energy Fields, which you can just sign up to and receive into your inbox. Very, very helpful in these times. If you're interested to know more about Kali or Sekhem, my husband and I are going to be leading an online workshop on Kali and Sekhem. I don't know exactly what it's going to be yet, but we're going to share that with you because we work very closely with those two allies. And so watch out for that. And for those of you that are already working with some sort of holistic or energy or wellness practice, we have a brand new holistic medicine practitioner online course where we will be initiating you into some of these key technologies, the Kali technologies, the Reiki and the yoga technologies that are really necessary and needed for these times, not just for the coronavirus times, but we have a big job now ahead of us to really put in action the evolutionary action for creating this world that we've been pondering on now for 6 weeks. So we are just really excited to share with you the tried and tested technologies that are incredibly deep, esoteric, much of sacred and secret teachings for so long, and we just want to hand it over to you on a plate. So get in touch if any of this calls you, and I will connect with you tomorrow or at some time in the future. Namaste.